do I need to pause for a second?
Just make sure we use the mics. Y'all doing a great job.
That was my fault. I started without my mic.
We'll try to adjust everything to make sure it's good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so
Yes, Charlie, the answer is yes.
Yes, I nominate Nita Collier for chair.
Second.
Currently, we're just taking nominations.
Oh, sorry.
Gosh, I jump ahead.
That's okay.
Where do you
Are there any further nominations? Okay, if there are no further nominations, I hereby declare nominations closed. A vote will now be taken. Those in favor of Nita Collier for chairman of the Madison County School Board for 2025, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. 5-0. Did you vote? Aye. Okay, thank you. 5-0. And Nita is elected chairman.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. You can have it.
Y'all are so kind, and now you give it back. Thank you guys.
Can
I'm
we
humbled.
say anything? Are we allowed to speak? I think Nita did a fantastic job for the past couple of years, and I think she'll do a fine job this year. I appreciate you leading, and takes the weight off of me for
Thank
one.
you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
I'll second that for the last year, but I don't know how much.
Thank you guys. Y'all are sweet. I am humbled. All right, you have me for 12 more months. All right, moving on. The floor, I will open the floor. The floor is now open for nominations for the vice chairman of the Madison County School Board for 2025. Do I hear a nomination?
I nominate Chris Wingate.
Okay, sorry, I'm reading that wrong. Okay, Chris Wingate has been nominated to serve as school board vice chairman. Are there any further nominations? Okay, there are no further nominations. I hereby declare the nominations closed. The vote will now be taken. Those in favor of Chris Wingate for vice chairman of the Madison County School Board for 2025, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it, 5-0, and Chris Wingate is elected vice chairman. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Chris. You did a great job last year, too.
All right. So we are gonna move on with the budget work session, team, and do the rest of the reorganization after, the budget work session, so we can get the budget work session in a timely manner. So I will open the budget work session now. And Ms. Graham is going to lead that session. There is a PowerPoint in the second item under budget work session. If you want to open that and follow
Is
along.
that B? Yeah, item B, okay.
Huh?
Item
You got
B.
it? Yep, item B. Okey doke.
All right, we'll get started. I'll have time to pull it up on the screen. Okay, well, while this is gone to check, we'll just go on, and the person that's here has a copy, and we all have copies. So we'll start with a reminder, the first few slides, since the board hasn't changed, are really just a review from last year with some updated totals. So we just wanted to keep that in there, because it's good when you're thinking about the budget, if you have everything, all your information together. So we did a reminder, and for the community as well, of our local composite index. And so we can think of that as for each dollar spent, the locality pays 47 cents and the state gives us 53 cents. That's what it means when we say our local composite index is 0.4746. So if you go on to the next slide, our total budget last year was $25,111,583. That did include that all-in funding. Remember, the all-in funding was the funding that followed ESSER. So then after that, we got that, the money to do like tutoring and to help with improved reading and to do things to improve our attendance. So this year's current budget, we had 400,000 in there from the all-in. So that's what makes up, and there's the percentages for you. We know some of you like to ask like exactly what percentage of our budget comes from which buckets. Yes, ma'am.
Is the all-in funding, which piece of the pie is that one?
That's coming from federal
What, okay, so it's part of that 10%.
or state. Oh yeah, because state federal gave it to the state to spend, so it's on our state allotment. It was passed down from federal to the state.
Alright.
So in this budget, it is in the state. It's right in the state. That's like a trick question. That was good. And then we just have a list for you on the next slide to remind you the state funding that has the coverage for SOQ, which we know that's the standards of quality and how many staff members we have for each subject or for each department. Funding for state raises, if applicable. Current budget, was a 3% raise. For our preschool program, textbooks, for class size reduction, at-risk, technology, and CTE. The next slide. And again, this is a review, so for anyone listening, the board had this actual information last year as well. So 4 categories of state revenue. Did you want to do that?
Sure. We have sales tax, we have categorical payments, which are for specific initiatives. You have to participate in them to get the money. Incentive and lottery funded programs. Incentive is what you have to participate in. Everybody participates in categorical. And then we have standards of quality programs, 4 categories for state revenue. And then we have, part of our funding is federal funding, which we have Title I is for reading specialists, instructional coaches and teachers, instructional materials, and professional development. Title II, a lot of the same things, instructional coach, a portion, professional development, and also that pays for recruiting trips for going to colleges and recruiting teachers. Continuing with federal funding, we have Title IV, and that is for student support and academic enrichment. And we couple that with Title I funds for a reading specialist. We also get a preschool grant for special ed and Title VI-B for special ed, and that is strictly to help extra funding for special ed students. We have Perkins, which is the federal CTE funds that we get at $27,493. They might change a little bit this year, the federal funding, we don't know yet. I'm trying to hold out and see how that changes. But if it changes, don't think it'll change a lot. Typically it doesn't. Unfortunately, when it changes, it usually goes down.
Do we have to have a local match for Perkins? Yeah.
We have local funding, and that covers part of the salaries and benefits that SOQ funding does not cover. Local funding also helps capital improvement, textbooks, that requires a local match. And the required local effort, that's based on our composite index. We have other local funds. When it comes to us, it's local funds. That's how we categorize it, but it's a federal program for broadband services. And that's typically been 50,000.
Is that scheduled to run out anytime soon, or how long have we been getting that?
It's actually in front of the Supreme Court right now because the funding is set by, tax that was by a nonprofit somehow connected to the FCC. So the Supreme Court is rehearing it, and so we should know like final word by June, is what we were told when we went to our conference. Last week, 2 weeks ago? We guess we were virtual a week ago.
We've
So-
probably been getting that 10 years, maybe 15, something.
Okay, just curious.
So we hope it's gonna still happen. Right, next slide. So this is just some information that we gathered last week. That just seems so long ago, but it was just last week. We were set to go to Richmond, but they ended up thankfully doing it virtually for us, so we were able to do that last Monday and Tuesday. And Jim Regerball is a fiscal analyst that always attends the conferences, and he just sheds a lot of light on the upcoming budget and fills us in on what's to come. And so we just pulled a couple of points, big points about the budget. That he said, like, it's the 4th year in a row of a large general fund revenue surplus above the adopted budget, so 1.2 billion in FY 2024, 4.7 billion in mandatory and voluntary general fund reserves, which is 17.4% of the general fund. The Virginia retirement system finances have improved. Teacher funded status currently is 84% at a rate of 14.2%. And then the introduced budget has 1.46 billion in additional balances forward. So FY 24 revenue surplus and unspent appropriations. So the last bullet there says it's an additional 294 million will be available to the General Assembly if they choose not to deposit that balance into the voluntary revenue reserve. So in other words, there's some money that can still needs to be done.
Yeah.
So, next slide. He shared key points specifically related to K-12 that we wanted to share. So the budget, and this is the biennium, so this is the second year of it. Again, there's the 3%, because it was 3% last year. There's another 3% in there that the governor left in there for the state share of the SOQ positions. The localities must fund 1.5%. And expand at-risk add-on and combine the prevention, intervention, and remediation program. That was part of the JLARC study. Improve English language learner staffing standards. So there's a lot of ELL funding and several bills that they were talking about today on a call that we do coming for like ELL support. Expand reading specialist staffing, 80 million each year into school construction fund from the casino reserves, and authorizes 200 million in FY 2025 and 50 million in FY 26 in literary fund school construction loans. So, and then next slide. Oh, go ahead.
Are those like gonna be broken down into like grants that we can apply for, or is it automatically put into the budgets for things, or is it just?
Speaking about like the construction loans.
Yeah, I mean, just like, yes, like stuff like that, like the construction or like expanding reading specialist staffing and things like that.
Usually like with reading specialist staffing, it would be like we would get a certain amount.
Okay.
Now the loans and things like that, you like apply for it.
So for the construction portion,
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
That
2 years ago, they gave us, so I'm still on. 2 years ago, they just gave all the school systems money and we got that $1 million. But that was the first time they'd done that, and I couldn't tell you when. But now this literary loan is you apply, and there's only so much money available. Because they had that for a long time too. That's the literary loan was how the remodel at Waverly Yale was done with the literary loan. And at that point, that was going on during 2000, and it was 3%. Just to go down the road. Yeah.
But like the school construction funds, that's just a big piece of that 80 million. But
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
No. I don't think they gave that to anybody this year.
Oh, okay.
You have to apply for it. And have significant local match.
Right. Usually with the matches for stuff like that, it's 25%, but that one, it was, the last construction thing was like categories you had to meet, like you had to
the second bullet point there, what is JLALC?
J-Lark.
The jailer study.
What is JLALC?
What is the jailer study?
JLARC is part of the General Assembly, and that's what they call, whenever they do a study, it's done by, JLARC recommends it. Now, what that stands for.
Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission.
Right, okay.
They're like the people that do the studies.
There's
Go.
a jlarc.virginia.gov if you wanna.
So it's not just education, they do studies or whatever's needed.
I think it's frustrating. The next bullet point is frustrating. The governor's budget has $72 million set aside to improve English learner status. I mean, that's frustrating to me because that's taxpayer money to teach people to speak English that aren't paying taxes. It's frustrating.
Any other thoughts of that slide? We'll go on to the next one. So this is just kind of an overview again of the governor's introduced budget, things that were increases and then things that were decreases out of the budget. I don't know if you guys want me to read all of them, but I was reading the last slides. If you just want to kind of glance through them, we want to be mindful of our time because we really want to talk about our nitty-gritty stuff, but we just wanted to give you information to have so you could follow along. The next slide is interesting because the money committees, things that are being like tossed around as ideas, won $200 million to address the K-12 support that was taken out, the support cap positions where we fund them, where the state used to fund them like 2007-8 before it was cut. 140 million increase in K-12 special education supports, that would be very helpful. 116 million for a 1% bonus for teachers and state employees, or 122 million 1% salary increase for teachers and state employees, and that would be on top of the governor's recommended 3%. So those are definitely things to watch through the General Assembly. Okay, so the next slide gets us into our stuff. It's set up again, your priorities are on the left, and then we match where the budget falls into your priorities on the right. So the first, if you want to click on the list there, that will take you to everything that our staff came up with this year. And again, this is run through our teacher advisors. There's 3 representatives from each building. They talk to the staff, they work with the principals. We talk to the principals in leadership meetings as well, and that's how this is formed. So staff members have input on needs. So this isn't the budget list of what we're gonna put on the budget. These are just let you know what everyone is saying that would be nice to have. If you're having trouble seeing it, I did make copies of this because I know last year.
I can't get there for some
Okay.
reason. I mean, you can open,
Because you're definitely not gonna be able to see it by looking on the screen. Does anyone else need a copy? Yeah, I made a copy for everyone.
Yes, that'd be great, thank you.
This was hard last year.
I can do that.
Because I'm under this.
Good speech, isn't it?
Okay, so the first 3 things on there, I put on there, very transparent. That was the 3% raise for all staff for the governor's budget. I did list that as a high priority because I feel like the momentum that you all started last year with working on the scale, if we don't take a raise, then, and everyone else around us does, we're working ourselves backwards again. So I feel like that's always a priority.
And the 340 is our share, it's the state county share of that, if we did that, is that right? Roughly?
Right,
That's
right,
not the total, that's the county. See,
right.
that would be the increase, or
Right.
what we need.
That's what we need. And and then cover that bump. So every year, we're gonna have some teachers that are moving up on the scale, so your teachers that are hitting 5 years, and your teachers that are hitting 10 years, and getting that bump, the difference between their 250 and the new 500, or the difference between the 1300 and the 500. So we are putting in 20,000 for that, because it's not too many people moving. And then we always like to try our very best to cover health insurance when possible, because it's not just about salary, it's about a competitive benefits package. So we want to stay as competitive as possible. Our health insurance is already pretty expensive, so
And health insurance can make a huge difference.
Yes, it
in
can.
decisions for personnel.
it really
Very
can.
much so.
And we don't know how much in the budget. We're gonna budget, and do a guesstimate of 10%, which we hope is over, but we do know that it is gonna be an increase. Tina received word that there will be some sort of increase.
Is that sort of a best practice among local other school districts? Are they doing the same thing, trying to cover healthcare?
Oh, yeah.
increase?
Yeah. Because there's,
Yeah.
you know,
Makes
some
a lot of
people,
sense.
it does make a big difference,
I'm just
especially.
curious how
It's unaffordable. I mean,
some are better than others.
it is almost unaffordable in here. Like, it's almost unaffordable.
What's the plan?
And then we can tackle this however you want. If you want to kind of look through it yourself and ask questions, we can read through them, whatever y'all prefer. You'll see some new positions on there. I try to be, and people that wrote in, we try to be very descriptive for you, so you would know the why things are on there.
Is the high, is that your assessment, or is that the person who put it in?
The person that put it in.
You didn't, so
Everything's high.
you haven't made an assessment yet on that. right?
We worked as a leadership team on it, but I didn't color code this one yet for you, because we're gonna get to
This
that.
is just everything.
Right, this is just everything. Okay. Which honestly, you can see since we've been doing this the past 6 or so years, how the list has gotten smaller. It's more very concise now.
For like the lead nurse position, like, is that,
Add on to a current nurse.
okay, okay.
More responsibilities.
So she fills in back and forth in the event like a nurse missing?
No, just taking on more responsibilities for what they do.
Sounds
But
like we-
could.
So if we have, with us, where that we have that word, then if one's missing from a building,
Oh, yeah, they would have.
that's the one that takes that over.
Yes.
Or goes back and forth for half a day.
Back and forth, that would be good.
Saying like, anytime you say responsibilities, like, what does that really mean? How does it get in detail? What are they doing? Are they leading all the CPR classes? Are they taking care of all concussion protocols? Or is she a trainer? Like, what is that in detail?
And you'll see some positions on here that are on here because the funding is ending for them. Kindergarten teacher, we covered with all in, where we added the 6th kindergarten teacher this year. Behavior interventionist, that was ESSER, we moved into all in. Counselor at Waverly, the same, it was part of ESSER funding, we moved to all in. So now that that's coming to an end.
Do you know, approximately how many kids you have?
Waverly is like 340. Is that it?
It's a rough estimate, I don't know.
Oh, it is in the presentation.
Oh.
Yes, okay.
I will look it up, thank you.
Middle school football is on here. That's been a request that's come. We had a meeting from Parks and Rec. They feel like it would be better, not managed, I mean, they do a great job, but maybe easier on families and stuff if the middle school football team could practice with our football team and immediately like leave school and go right to it. So it is a budget thing though. It will take money for us to take it on. So that's in there.
Does it help the current athletic situation? So in years past, I think in history, Madison County's had a freshman football team one time, and that was in the mid-80s. And at that point, they had enough people coming through that they had a JV freshman and a varsity, which is rare for this level. I'm not opposed to a middle school football team just as far as you get parents travel. Because currently, Parks and Rec goes all over the place. They play massive things. We get kids getting pounded by other 8th graders rather than being able to be with kids their own size. And I'm not opposed to it, but I'd like to know how that's gonna affect our varsity program coming through, and with any sport with that.
Well, and like, does also with that funding cover transportation and, or is that just
Transportation, we
like
did not do that. That is
Possession.
coaches and like refinishing helmets is in that.
Yeah.
I think that estimate's low.
It
But
is,
it's-
like, that might be the cost for next year, but eventually, Parks and Rec, we're gonna donate all the uniforms, but eventually, uniforms will be purchased, so it will be an expense. That's why at the moment, I did put medium on that, just because there are staff positions on,
All right.
at rate profit.
It's funny that I just had to ask about it. Literally.
And you'll see some technology things on here, because that was the other thing listed on the slide of there, we have some technology needs, you'll see those peppered throughout too. Like, one thing we're gonna have to do is update our website, that's something that has to happen, so that's on here.
And I'm looking at like the curriculum work with math, and that seems like a very,
Actually, I'm
Reason.
meant to take that off, because that's something we'll cover, that's already on the
like,
budget.
that's a very reasonable,
Right, yeah.
reasonable price point to have that fixed. I'm all in favor of that one, that seems pretty simple.
That, I meant to take that off. Because at first I was gonna list out all the curriculum work, so you guys could see, but we actually already budgeted for it, so. And then like you'll see flexible instruction time and the Waverly reading tutors. Those are things that have been so beneficial this year, but again, the funding for it is coming to an end because of all in. And some of it will be added.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, some of it's gonna be added to the CIP list, or might already be on CIP, but I left it on here because it showed you the urgencies of how the principals feel, but like refinished student bathroom floors at Waverly. The group will be refinished, the hardwood floors, so some of these things will be on the CIP.
I'm sure it's gonna pop up, but with the flexible instruction time, reading tutors, things, if there's any data that supports that, since that was implemented, that scores rose, changed or affected, I think that might help.
Yeah.
Just putting it out ahead of time, because that's gonna be a question that's asked. Question, have we looked at anything, looking at this shared versus ESL assistant and price tag wise? Population grows regardless, that's there, and there's a need, it's hard to fill that, there's not enough ESL teachers, assistants anywhere. Have we looked at any other counties and how they're handling that? Like, and we are floating an idea just up the road about allowing bilingual students that are willing to help, like in-school tutors earn credit for working with kids who are.
That's a great idea, like how we send our high school kids, like, who wanna be elementary teachers. That would be-
Absolutely.
That's perfect, that's
And
a
that way
really
they
good
can,
idea.
they have a, they're in school, they have an opportunity to earn a credit for being able to translate a tutor and working with kids on English.
That's awesome.
And that takes a lot of weight off of our ESL
That's-
school
yeah.
teachers, because I think we have 2 per hour, if I'm not mistaken.
Well,
And,
yeah,
and that's hard, 4 buildings, 2 teachers, but then you have a population that then can, within itself, help itself. That could be a great way of adjusting that.
Yeah.
And saving some budget funds, as well as that. That's not an important position, but that's a great way to also give understood some of our students as well.
And we could do that not just with ESL students, but higher level language, like, I mean, our Spanish 4 and 5, or what that's language.
right, so I
like,
think it's,
not just Spanish, what, yeah. I
something that supports
Mhm. I like that idea.
that program, and they could get a you know, self-learning, credit for that.
Like an independent study.
Yes, that's what I was looking for, thank you.
The pieces with art, is the art about to move back into the land of the building, or are they gonna,
Possibly. That's what they're discussing.
it's not the boiler's fixed?
It is where the kiln is.
Yeah, the kiln's there.
There's no weird smell anymore. Might be good.
Can any of this furniture be put on CIP?
That's what we've talked about.
What about the camera software?
We did,
Could that be put on CIP?
No, we talked about that in CIP, but it's a license, and you have to keep renewing the license for the cameras. So when we discussed it in CIP, they wanted it on operating and not on CIP.
Okay.
High school math teacher, says many of the math teachers are teaching 4 blocks. How many of the math teachers are teaching 4 blocks?
I'm sorry.
How many of the math teachers are teaching 4 blocks?
I think everyone had at least one overload this year. So in a school year, high school teachers do 6 blocks because it's an eight blocks total in the year, and they have a planning each period. And I think there's a couple that have double, like are teaching all 8 blocks, and then a few have 1. So 4 out of the 5 have an overload. Oh, we call it overloads.
The lead nurse position, who's doing that job?
The high school leaders.
So that's who requested it.
Right.
That's who requested that position.
But would it necessarily be the high school nurse? Like, or would we like, if Ms. Moore in the middle school wanted to do it, would we move her to the high school and then?
None of that's been discussed. It's just the one that has it on there.
Oh,
I mean, if there's someone here that's doing it now,
I don't think
We
it
don't
is
give
doing that.
anyone that title.
not the title, but the job,
No.
to assist in providing evaluation of the school health program. So nobody's doing that now.
Well, a lot of this calls for Jeanette,
I was
right?
just thinking that's doing that, is
Yeah, Jeanette Alexander does a lot of this stuff.
And who provides oversight of school nursing staff
That's Jeanette Alexander.
and promoting the health and education of students.
That's Jeanette. Yeah, she oversees all that right now.
So that's what I'm trying to get at. If she's doing that now, then I don't think we need a lead nurse.
You're on the right.
Unless you want to give Mrs. Alexander's other stuff to do once, you know.
Right,
so,
right.
Okay.
Well,
Um,
and I guess it would be a question too, is if she feels overloaded by other tasks, like, cause I know Jeanette oversees lots and lots of different things.
And the fact that she isn't a licensed nurse, so I think that's how that got on here in the first place, is that she's over things and she's over the nurses, but she's not a nurse, and so that's how that ended up on here.
Do we have any situations where there could potentially be a liability? Where she's handling something, that was just,
She doesn't directly handle like the health things and like the health
Yeah, it's
decisions.
just the
so-
oversight.
Yeah, it's the
And a
oversight.
lot of this is like administrative kinds of things. And make sure we have compliance with certain things that come down, and then she works with the nurses to make sure that it's done in each building.
Another one here though, talking about the first grade teachers, kindergarten teachers, ninth grade teacher, English teacher. So if we had the money readily available, I would just check all this, get it all,
Yeah, we
because
are.
let's just do it all, but we don't. And we have lots of parents that point out that the grades are not good, the graduation rate's not good, or whatever, and this is, when we say that this is evidence that it takes money to do all this stuff, right? And where does the money come from? Well, the county provides 41% of it, the state provides 53% of it, the federal provides 5%. So, how do you balance it out? And that's what y'all are here for, obviously. Now, when it comes to the first grade teacher and the kindergarten teacher, and I'm just speaking from how I'm thinking about it, and I don't know what y'all, want versus need. Like a desperate need is something definitely worth looking at. It's just something we wanna make things easier, then that's one thing to argue about. But if our number, with the first grade and kindergarten, if the numbers of students in the class is at or below the state level, then I think we try to hang there. And there's a slide that Mr. Wingate just showed me, I'm not sure how far down it is, but
Here, it's for one
yeah,
minute.
so if those numbers keep going lower, then maybe we kind of,
We're on the same page.
yeah, hang where we are, okay, so I'm glad to hear that.
And we always say every year, we don't go for the kindergarten teacher until we get the kids enrolled. Because we can't guess how many kindergarten kids are coming.
Right.
And that is our most competition, for lack of better words, is, kindergarten, first grade, because most private schools in the area, that is the grades they serve. So it's hard for us.
And that kindergarten teacher, I mean, the one they're asking for there, is that to hold on to the sixth teacher?
It
Because
is,
of the all
it
in
is,
not
yes.
happening?
Yes. And then the first grade would be the brand new.
Okay,
What?
that was just what I was-
The first grade would be brand new, that's not current.
Okay, so
But
it's just,
kindergarten,
take what
there
Charlie's
is
saying, so
one.
if you look at the kindergartner this year, it's 16-1 is the, but if we don't fund that, because then we go down to 5, then it's gonna bump back up to 21, 22, something like that.
Right.
But the first grade, we're at 20-1,
And that's with 5 teachers.
and so we're pretty in decent shape for that. It seems like the kindergartner, I think it's something to look at, but the first grade doesn't seem to really need this key person. Okay. So you have, this is all raw
Does
data.
yeah,
You're right.
this is good because when I look at it, I'm like, hey, this is not bad. This is all that we're saying we need. Like, this is what people wanted us to bring forward. So we're doing pretty good. Like, I agree with Charlie. I wish we could fund all of this and it would be great, but we're just not there. But this is a workable list and it's thoughtful, like the things that folks have put on there.
That makes sense. I understand the need for the goodness of it, but I just want to make sure I understood.
So out of the data findings, anybody else besides NPS put anything about having a behavior interventionist?
They utilize that position the most. As a matter of fact, right now, that's where that position is stationed. Last year, we split the counselor that's on here from Waverly and the behavior specialist. Each were half a day. But this year, they worked it out where the counselor is staying at Waverly, the behavior specialist is staying at the primary. It just works for those grade levels.
How many, behavior plans
That was
would you work on? Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to break that. We can find that out for you.
Be scared, yes.
Well, and like the FBAs too, like, there's a high number of FBAs without behavior plans.
Through those evidence, usually try to focus on instruction first, discipline second, and then with certain situations, behavior pops up. And so I'm kind of curious as to like how much we have of that as far as
Okay.
just like the volume versus the physical amount.
Yeah.
Because with a math teacher, your overall testing scores up. And just looking at it from that perspective.
And, like, I'll converse with you, like, what's the success rate? Are we tracking our behavior plans?
Seconds took the words out of my mouth.
I'm a behavior person, so.
There you go.
We'll get you that information.
And I've noticed that furniture is always on.
Always.
And I
Ongoing. Kids are rough on furniture.
Sorry, I asked different jokes on me. I say, maybe just get giant big bags, right?
Oh, can you imagine what
They
they
would
would
never
do?
sleep with it. I know.
I just have to go out.
If it's okay with you, we'll move on, like, keep looking at this, and we can keep talking about this, because we were gonna go into closed session at, 6:35, so there could be other things on here that will probably take us back to these conversations.
Okay.
So, the next slide was, we've already touched on that, that was your goal of the highly desirable work environment. So again, meeting and doing 3% salary increase for all employees, and then the health increase. And when we work the budget, we're gonna estimate 10%, which we hope is so incredibly good. We did share this. This this isn't really part of this budget discussion since CIP kind of runs, you know, off kind of to the side. And you know, Mr. Sheets can provide insight to this list as well, but at the moment, this is the FY '26 budget request for CIP. We haven't met yet. The January meeting was postponed, so the February meeting will be like the final look at this, but right now, this is where we are. There was, it was like 200 and some thousand, I think, for school board window replacement, like throughout, but that's been narrowed down just for that fitness facility. It needs to be on all the school board, but the fitness facility is where the new HVAC system went in, and those windows are so poor. Dr. Timmons is worried about the strain on the system with the way the windows are.
And it's not.
Basically, he explained, they have no insulation, so the AC and heat will it's just on and off, on and off. So they won't be spending hundreds of thousands on HVAC. So
And you'd be destroying a ton of equipment that's in there.
Exactly.
And treadmills, all that kind of stuff, it's not cheap.
And they said are the
Yep.
bleachers for the middle school, that quote just came in last week,
That's not bad.
$322,000.
That's
for both
better than I
sides.
thought. When I
Yeah.
was looking at it going, that's not bad.
It's bad when we're saying not bad to a number that high, but really, it's a large gym, so I was impressed, it is both sides. Track, to replace the track, because we can't resurface that track anymore, it has to be replaced now, so that's $243,000.
I have a question real quick.
That was the quote we got, yes, sir.
On those bleachers, now, there's gonna be some disassembly to start with, to get old stuff out, put new stuff in. I'm sure that the company, whoever's gonna install bleachers will do the removal. But I'm wondering if there's a local company that's willing to come in and do the demo, and so that it's ready for the new stuff just to come in, maybe to save some money that way.
Maybe. Or, I mean, we could surplus them while they're in there, because sometimes there's organizations that'll take your old.
Yes.
If they just want
Better
it,
yet,
then, you know,
better.
do pieces, so that could be a way to get rid of it for free, but
Yeah.
come and pick it up and it's yours.
Yes, thank you, yeah,
So-
great idea.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, they've been there since '93. That's when
They have.
Chris and I graduated in that gym. But they're metal, and they're amazingly well made. They've lasted a great long time. And so that, I'm very curious as to who is doing because we just replaced ours at Culver High School. And that's better than what we spent. And our gym's bigger over here. So I'm kind of curious. I would like to know
What company quoted it?
what company
We
and,
can get you that.
I can find
and what it looks like, because
I'll text him right now.
just troubleshooting
Yeah.
some issues. Because some are greater than others. But the track price is really good. Did they say
It
how
is.
long that would last as far as resurfacing afterwards?
Is it 10 years? Or maybe that's what they used to tell us about the old one. I'll fact check it. Yeah.
Usually it has 10 is normal, but that's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm surprised about the track. I thought
And
that
he
was
got a
a
couple
lot
of quotes,
more.
so
They're
that was,
usually full.
that was the best quote that came in.
I wonder if it's an opportunity because it's a little lower, to just a little bit, if that's such a grim place, but I want an opportunity to put just a little bit of beautification of it, I mean, some bushes, some signs, track records or something. I mean, it's pretty,
That kind of takes
unattractive.
us,
It's an unattractive place, and it's a span for the athletes and families and stuff. I wonder if it makes sense to add, I hate to add something to it, but add $10,000, $15,000 to say, hey, we're gonna really make this a place that represents Madison well, instead of, it's gonna walk out there, you feel like, it's cut, all the stumps are down there by the fence, and they look like just looks pretty.
Yeah, and keep in mind is our school is the only school in the area outside of East Newview High School that's visible from Route 29. Like people drive by this place all the time.
Maybe,
It's funny as it sounds, that does carry some weight with kids with pride. With our track, being that we are successful with 29, the ability to hold regional meets, invitational meets, and profit off of that to help support what we're paying for would be a tremendous asset.
yeah.
Maybe we could just ask, maybe we could ask, how much it would cost to, just a real, get a quote on some trees and bushes and some mulch and sign. Get the stumps cut down and the fence fixed. The fence was at one point kind of
Well, and it would be
falling down.
definitely looking that with the track in mind though too, because we don't wanna end up with another root problem or like,
Correct.
other struggles, like what can you reasonably put near the track to make it inviting but not dangerous. We don't want a bunch of bushes that invite lots of bees and things
No,
like
that would be
that.
bad, for sure.
Mhm.
The next thing on there is a building study. That's come up a few times now in CIP where it's time. It's
Yeah.
time to start to decide what's gonna happen to this campus. Like in 10 years from now, are we rebuilding? Like what are we gonna do? We're gonna build, it's even come up on the track site, like what's happening to this building? Like what are we gonna do? Because something's gonna have to be done because so many things need repair. Even if we're not here for it, because maybe they're not gonna start building it in 20 years. We would wanna be here in 20 years.
It's been 30 years.
We need a plan.
Yeah.
It's literally been 30 years.
I mean, the year that we graduated was the year this place was renovated. Okay.
And it was amazing. You did
Yeah,
a great
'cause-
job.
We're getting ready to
Yeah,
pivot.
So there's time for a plan.
We should talk about that. I know at least 3 of the 5 board members remember that being a construction project and like, wow, it's finally changing. It
Yes,
has
it's
sense.
totally, I mean, cause I was in 7th grade the year that Wetzel opened, so it's beyond anything.
I mean, Waverly started to look sharp. I mean, the gym floor was saturated. It could be potential hazard. There's a giant divot in it. But Waverly looks great. Primary school looks great. And then we have a complex here where we have 2 buildings combined. We have an opportunity to kind of make it into a more functional
Yes.
piece for both schools. And then with the middle school roads, we maybe can use wings in the high school and vice versa.
And that's needed.
And the middle school, also is not ADA compliant.
No,
It is not.
no.
Mm.
And we've talked about that many times, and
It is not.
the figure to fix that room was astronomical.
In more than one way, but, I mean, you know, things happened and we were able to navigate it. But, that's a personal experience, and my husband couldn't pick his kids up from
That's
school.
horrible.
So that was a problem.
Just like getting to the door.
Yeah.
You know, you can't
It is
pull up,
not
Because you
ADA
can't pull up.
compliant.
not to the main entrance, you
Yeah.
have to go to the side.
You have to go to the side entrance or they have to walk
Because it was
things
never
out.
designed for that at all.
And the ramp to the lunchroom is absolutely not ADA compliant.
It's so steep.
The incline is way too steep.
And also coming down.
Huh?
And also coming down for real.
Which one?
And also coming down.
Right.
I went to
Yes, he
see
loves that. But he can't do it, he couldn't do it in the middle.
They just kind of built
He had
a
to have
layout.
it. I'm sorry.
So it's,
The other one is making a decision because so much of the community, well, first of all, you all use it, but so much of the community uses our auditorium. It's the largest gathering space in the county, and it's in desperate need of the audiovisual.
Oh,
It's just
desperate.
So that's on here. Continuing to fix some doors. We have
That-
some more doors that need help.
System is probably 40 years old.
Oh, gosh. Incrementally replacing the fan coil units at Waverly, so 12 of them are on here for this coming year. Electric panel boxes at, the middle school, HVAC replacement at All Ed, a facilities truck, and the 2 school buses we have on there. So that's the CIP budget request for this upcoming year.
Do they have the deal on the school buses this year? No deal on them this year? Shucks.
Okay, we decided it was really important to look at our student-teacher ratios historically and talk about what's happening with enrollment, because that's definitely something that is really coming down hard on us. It started, several years ago becoming an issue, but then COVID happened and we got the ESSER funding and the all-in funding, and that was cushioning us. But that is over, so we need to take a look at things. First is put this in here, as we make decisions about staffing. So you have a picture over time of what it's looked like, what our class sizes have looked like, just so it would fit on the page. We went back to 2011-12. That was just arbitrary, but it was far enough back. So you can just take a look. It's been fairly consistent over time. You can see years where, it was a few more in a class than others, but overall, it's been pretty consistent. Give or take a few kids. I was a little shocked by that, because you know, people will tell you about the good old days and small class size. I was expecting to see like 14, 15. And I was like, oh, okay, well, it's been about the same. So. And you can see the same third through fifth grade, so Waverly.
Waverly's actually down.
And last year was a rough year for Waverly with staffing. It took us a while to find some teachers, but this year's going really well. And then the middle school, the way that was reported, I just kind of didn't have, it used to be reported like by 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and now it's needed to be reported by subject area. So I mean, either way you look at it, you can get a general idea of class sizes. And the reason why the middle school is so tiny, the past couple of years, is the way they do their schedule, where she's doing like AB for her science and social studies teachers. It makes the classes smaller. So that's why. So you really just look at English and math to get a better idea of how many kids are in a class.
Okay. Let's see, how are they doing that?
Well, and before, I mean, so we switched to the AD schedule when I was still at the middle school. And so before that, it was just one semester of high school of 8 of each, so they weren't like, and so it's still kind of, that's why those classes have always been a little stuff.
And then taking a look at high school. And we just did the core subjects, just so we weren't too far in the weeds, but gives you an idea. Now, some high school classes, because it doesn't matter if you're a large high school or a tiny high school, you try to offer as much to your kids as possible. And the more CTE you try to add, or electives in general that you try to add, those classes will tend to be smaller because you know your kids are spreading out to the areas that interest them. So a lot of your elective classes will have a smaller class size than your core subjects, give or take. And there's a cap for CTE. Many CTE classes you can't have more than 20 for safety.
It's probably good. That's also driving like that need, the perceived need for the other math teacher. I mean, so the class size is small, but it's trying to do so many subjects probably. Trying to find that balance.
And for us in particular, our math department, they try to, or they do right now, make like algebra 1 and geometry. They take that course and they spread it over an entire year, so the kid has algebra every day, all year long, geometry every day. So the kids that need the extra math support.
When, I know you said we were gonna end up going back to this for some of the things, so the questions that I have, like, so the positions at the high school that we're looking at, like the English teacher, the math teacher is because of overload, so those numbers are reflected, but like the English was 16.8 on average kids, that's without.
That's right. That's because they want to pull in and do like read 180 and offer like a different type of class for kids in a more intense
Now,
class.
but they're doing that
They're
with
doing that right now through the special education program.
Okay, so it's just they want to be able, I mean, because I know that there were non-special education kids that have been offered that.
So they want to expand.
Okay. So I wasn't, so would that be I can't remember what she called, what Lindsay's class was called, like the success skills or whatever it is, like is that position for another instructional?
It is, yeah,
Or
it's
is it
another,
for that success skills
or
position?
another English math.
Okay.
Yeah. It says we're moving to read 180 in the strategic instructional courses back into the English department. So we'd like to create a year long, so they want to double block like the department.
Okay, so that makes sense. But just in ninth grade.
Well, and they're moving to catch up, because there's some kids that take ninth grade full time, so we're trying to prevent that.
Makes sense.
Because it's ninth, you move in high school by credits, and you also, your English have to pass that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that might be something to look at too, is what is our retention levels of ninth grade English?
Okay. Okay, we have 10 minutes. If we go to the enrollment slide,
That's a stopping.
that's the slide. That slide
That's
and the next
depressing.
slide, if you wanna kind of flip back and forth.
Is
I
that
can't get
current
over.
seniors and current
It
last
is.
year's seniors, this year's
It's
kindergarten?
current and current, just so I could just give you a quick snapshot of like, look, this is the difference here, and that, is one of the big things you can watch, like, and I can send you the more details you can see by grade levels of that enrollment slide, but you can just see, like, in 2007, the senior class was like in like the 160s, and you have 130 or something kindergartners, so just watching it over time of what's coming in. It's pretty good.
There's around 93 kids in my class.
Do you know, is the population, youth population of Madison County the same, stayed stable?
I think that's.
It's just people getting out of the school, or is the population lower?
I wonder if it's aging, and that's what we need to look into.
I mean, that's a key question, is whether it's a small population or people doing more and more homeschool, private school.
Yeah.
I don't think homeschool numbers have changed that much.
They kind of stayed around like 200.
I mean, it's just a population thing, though. The youth population. Which, if that's the case, you can't really fight it. I mean,
Right.
it's
I don't
just
think,
demographic.
I don't think the population has changed that much.
So looking, I mean,
I think it's a change within the same number.
so I just Googled, and in 2010, Madison County had 13,308 people, and in 2022, it's 13,820.
Well, it's a youth population we're talking about.
And yeah, so that's just the overall population, so like, it's gone up, but not by much, and I mean.
So families aren't having as many children.
Right.
And it seems like we're only gaining kids
Or the
from the high school,
Yeah.
from like probably private,
Right, yeah.
because they all go through K through 8 and they're done.
Dr. Jones, do you know the numbers on like homeschool and private school?
We have
Do
that.
you have that? Has that gone up and up as the public schools go down? Has it gone up?
It's stayed fairly steady.
It's just a demographic thing.
It's not a huge.
The aging of the county.
People retire, they're sick of the city.
So
Then they come here.
if you go back to the enrollment slide, one thing that's part of that JLARC study is how small divisions have to pay more per student, and the kind of hitting it even, because no matter what, we have to have a central office. There's state reports that have to be done. We have to have principals. We have to have assistant principals, because, we have to have administration. We have to have a facilities department. We have to have a transportation department. There are things that a small division has to have. It's so expensive, and it doesn't matter how many children you have. And they kind of like break even mark, they say, the economies of scale is 2,000. So you see how far we are from that right now. And that's wholly on us, because we do spend less on instruction, and not too much. We do great with what we pay teachers, and we are putting a lot into instruction, but larger divisions, more of their money goes toward instruction, because we have to offer everything they have to offer, and we're small. So that's hard to, I know we're expensive to run, but it's just things that we have to do.
We were at 629. Just trying to keep us on pace.
So, yeah, okay, moving along. Quickly. So, this takes us to the nitty gritty. If we go to the slide that says, budget starting point. So our current budget, do you want to talk? Either way, I can make the plug. Okay,
So,
go.
for the last several years, we have reduced our ADM that we build the budget on, maybe by 20 students, average. And this year, we need to build the budget on 1520. This year's budget's built on 1620. But we don't have the students. And as Anna has said, we've been able to supplement that with ESSER and the All in Virginia funding. But yeah, we just don't have the students.
And that was a decision we made when we got that money too. We wanted to give and give. Like, when we talked about that a lot, like, we're like, this is not real life for us. Like, we don't have this kind of money, but we have it now, and we're gonna put it out there. We're gonna hire the teachers. We knew that they would be taxed when it came through, but we wanted to give everything to the kids that we had. But we knew this moment was coming, like, where hard decisions were gonna have to be made.
Right. So looking at this slide, we have tried to prioritize a few things, and when I say a few things, that's because it's probably all we're gonna be able to afford, is the 3% raise, adding the pay adjustments for years 5 and 10. If there's a health insurance increase, trying to not pass that along to employees. The technology needs that we have talked about in CIP, we talked about them, and they, I think I'm correct on this, Charlie, they referred those back to operating when we've been in there, because we tried CIP first. And then we have, in just looking at our utilities and special education services, custodial supplies, those lines need to increase just because we're spending the money. It's the cost of things and,
Prices have risen.
right, right. And we're working on a budget that unfortunately just includes these 4 points.
And at the moment, nothing. There's absolutely nothing on it from this list.
But it doesn't
Other
include some
than
of the
the
CIP stuff from prior.
And
CIP.
CIP is totally separate,
Right,
yeah,
right.
and it's funded differently.
And with losing that many students and just trying to put the raise in there, these 4 bullet points.
Neither one of us really knows it. I don't think we've slept since no. When we got the calc tool for the governor's budget and we decided, like, you can't make up money. Our 15, 20 will probably be our number if you look at how the enrollment's gone. So just to do this stuff and adjust our budget to 15, 20, we would need to ask the county for around 1.5 million. More, over this year's, over this year's grant, thank you.
That is, if you said, if you kept these things going.
But just what's on that list.
Just on the list of
That's-
1.5.
That's just this list. Just this list.
With the bulk
That's
of,
just the list on slide 26.
Yes, that's it.
Correct.
and the bulk of that comes from 3% raise, is that right?
Okay. And insurance. And the bulk of it comes from the hit of reducing our gradient of the 15, 20. Because that reduces your state funding. But that's happening. We have to be honest with ourselves as a community.
Because we're at 16 what, 50 something right now?
1620 is the current budget.
The,
And we're sitting at 1540
We're
right
sitting
now.
at
I mean, give and take, we have had a few kids enroll, but if this trajectory stays the same.
So it's almost like
we could even
almost $1
double
million, just under $1 million difference between 1620 and 1520. That's where because you're only talking like, on that list, it's like 500, 600,000, but then you lose 900,000 because of 16 to 1520 pretty much.
There's 100 kids.
100 kid decrease. Hey.
that 3% raise, is that just teachers?
No, that's all staff.
That's all staff, administrative, kitchen,
At the moment.
um,
It's everybody, it's just across the board. in the
Every
board.
employee.
We just,
and this is no disrespect to anyone working for the school, but there are a number of positions in the school board office that I don't think need a 3% raise.
and we've met with, he's like, that's okay. We already met with the leadership team and talked about like this total, and obviously when you're looking at a number like that, there's gonna have to be cuts. And we've already talked about that being one of them.
And I think that's fair.
Just having, not have a raise.
3% raise.
I mean, we saw that. We saw that with at the leadership level in schools. Either compare that to other schools, but we were healthier than we were in the teacher thing. So that's maybe that's what we have to look at is freezing.
Yes.
At some of the leader element, while still making sure we do the teachers so they continue to be competitive in their districts.
Can I just also add, like, I appreciate that you guys had that meeting and were willing, I mean, it's one thing to have it brought to you, but having you say it was already kind of discussed does show some integrity. So thank you for that.
And this is something that we would try to get to, not by people losing their jobs, but by not filling as people leave, like trying to work it around. Okay. So we're to when we said we're going to do closed session, talking about being like, but, alright, let me answer this. So if we want, okay,
Motion to, hold on.
We have to go into closed session.
Close this session first.
We have to close this session first. So, I don't think we need, do we need? We don't need a motion for that. We're closing the work session,
Alright,
and then someone needs to read the red.
pursuant to section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia, I move that the board go into closed meeting for the purpose of discussing the following specific matters. Number one, section 2.2-3711-1, discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of personnel, specifically to discuss the personnel matters for January 15th, 2025, to include resignations, retirements, substitute appointments, substitute reappointments, and coaching stipends. Item 4, section 2.2-3711.4, discussion of personnel matters not related to public business, specifically for the release of compulsory attendance for religious exemption.
We have a motion, we need a second.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any noes? We're in closed meeting. And where shall we escape to?